Welcome to the webcast demonstrating how models can be integrated and transformed with MetaEdit+. When working with multiple models, perhaps different languages, there are two primary ways to establish links between them: integration and transformation. When you are using language integration, we may have models of different kind, and the models then share the same information. So the common parts can be only edited in one place, but they are reflected in one or more languages depending on how many of languages we have. This is a typical and desirable approach with domain-specific languages, since we don't want to have copies of the same information to be changed, checked, and kept consistent. That just adds unnecessary complexity. This is an ideal and can be easily achieved with domain-specific modeling languages, since you can be in the driver's seat and have a control. This is not always possible, and then we can use model transformations. And with model transformations, we basically have a model which we translate to another model and so forth. This is a typical situation if we have several tools or use models that were not integrated in the first place. Let's next inspect some typical model-to-model transformations and run them in MetaEdit+. We have actually here different kind of cases, and the first case deals with importing information, models of different kind into MetaEdit+. They could be requirements coming from requirements tools or Excel or somewhere. They could be models coming from other modeling tools, or they could be just files that we actually read in and create models based on them. Let's look here a couple of cases. What I have here is a sample design. This is an example of an automotive design, and I'm basically using here domain-specific language for automotive-specific analysis architecture language. What I would like to do is I would actually like to add here requirements to my model. But if I go and add there, I don't have any requirements yet, so I would like to import requirements that are already defined elsewhere. Luckily, my colleague has now created a requirements document in Excel, and I would like to read this Excel information in and maybe use a specific requirement like requested talk queue requirement. So I'll import these requirements into MetaEdit+, and then I can start using them. So if I now go back to the requirement and I would like to reuse existing requirements, I can actually see also now the imported ones. So perhaps we would like to use this one. And now I can use these imported requirements and link them with my models. Like, for example, this brake pedal controller satisfies this requirement. And this is an example of integrating here Excel with API with MetaEdit+. We may have also models coming from other tools. And for that purpose, I have here an Excel, not an Excel, but an XML file that I would like to read in. So I'll go back to MetaEdit+, and I would like to now import these models, my brake design XML file. I read it in, and now I can go and basically see the stuff that has been imported, and then I can go and see and edit them further. Something like this. I would also like to use some of the data type definitions. I have here another file where I have a number of data types being defined, and I would like to now read these file information of this file and add that information into a library of my model, so I could then use them. So for instance, we may have here some braking system variables that we would like to use. For instance, here in this rotation element. So if I now would like to use existing ones, I will see only a few of them. But let's import these into MetaEdit+. I'll decide that I would like to import them in my library project. So here, which is currently empty. And now I'm importing my data type definitions, which I can now actually view also here in this imported library. So here you can see all these data types, and some of them, like let's say sensed touchdown, is the one we would like to use. So we can go here into the model, find the existing ones, or just reuse the existing ones. And let's say we refer breaking on variable. So here you saw 3 different cases of model-to-model transformations coming outside MetaEdit+. Of course, core part of model-to-model transformations is that we can run those within a tool. So inside MetaEdit+, we can create other kind of models by using already existing models. And for this case, I have a situation that let's say that we just imported these models, and I have been adding here variables and things like that, improve this further. And the next thing I would like to do is I would like to create a model for safety engineers, that they can make different kind of failure cases and error analysis based on this automotive architecture. So I'll have here a project called safety design. I would like to show my designs here in this safety project for my colleague, and I now run a model-to-model transformation to produce an error model for him. So I basically created an error model. If I go back to see MetaEdit, I can see here actually the error models now being created. So here you can see a sample error model, and if I go to see more detail, I can see generated error model. So this is a typical example of model-to-model transformations and running them. We may, of course, also do other kind of transformations, not within MetaEdit+, but transform models to other formats, like to testing tools, into other modeling tools, or frameworks or simulators, and so forth. So let's look at these examples a little bit more. I'm using here the same example of imported design that you already saw earlier. So one approach, for instance, would be that using these models we could generate, for example, Simulink models. And this is then the resulting Simulink model that can be used in another modeling tool. Another approach would be that we export the models in some XML format that is specific for a particle platform. Like here is a dedicated export for a language called eStadial, and here you can see this export format from this model following a specific XML schema. And this is now implemented with the generator of MetaEdit+. And we also may have an example, for example, targeting this model to another platform, like in automotive, for example, to AutoSAR. But we can also modify these models and configure them how the mapping to AutoSAR should basically go. For instance, let's say that we don't want that these 3 models map to AutoSAR, but all the rest will go. And now we can run the transformation here. And here we can basically see the generated output. And of course, if you wonder where these names are coming here, the underlying names, and since we are speaking here with model-to-model transformations from the exported model from MetaEdit+, we can also click here the links and trace back to our models as well. So MetaEdit enables to get from the generated code back to the model immediately. Last part of transformation is actually that we don't run a transformation, but we integrate tools. So it's not only limited between models. And in this case, we have ID integration. So we could use, for example, a programming environment like Eclipse or Visual Studio and integrate models there. And I have here actually an example of such an integration. So we have here the Visual Studio in use. And I will actually see here my sample models, including now the imported design function model, and I may open it here and access models this way. So as you saw, MetaEdit enables different kind of model-to-model transformations coming outside MetaEdit, inside MetaEdit, or targeting other tools. And for this purpose, MetaEdit provides different technologies. So you can do model-to-model transformation by using SOAP Web Services .NET API that is available for almost any programming language and platform in a distributed manner. You may also use XML importing and exporting with the models. You can use generators not only to produce the models but also parse existing models like the files we did for data types. And then you can also use command lines to call MetaEdit Plus as outside MetaEdit. So the best part is that you can change the domain-specific languages so that in most cases you can integrate model elements already at modeling time. And then there's less need to build such a model-to-model transformations. But of course, if you need them, MetaEdit allows you to do that. With MetaEdit Plus, you are in charge.